All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. I hope everybody is doing well today. We are going to talk a little bit about our fantasy picks for the next Bassmaster Elite Series event on Lake St. Clair. Now, obviously, we seem like it's a redo because we actually did our fantasy picks for Major League Fishing, which recently just visited St. Clair as well. So this is now Bass's Elite Series is Northern Swing on to St. Clair. St. Clair is commonly known as the sixth Great Lake to a lot of people, especially if you grew up in classrooms in the Mid-Atlantic or in the South. That's kind of like what you're taught is kind of like there's the Great Lakes and then there is St. Clair, or the heart of the Great Lakes. Some people refer to it as that as well. But what it's pretty much known for is smallies to a lot of us, which is why we cover it, which is just like we cover Cayuga, we cover St. Clair, because it's just one of the best smallie fisheries as far as lakes goes in the country. And it's also interesting because you got a lot of you draw a lot of anglers to an event like this. I mean, independent of it being an elite series event and the qualifications that stem from that, but other events that get scheduled on St. Clair. Because you have a lot of Canadians that know St. Clair really well. Remember, the line that you're seeing here on the screen here is everything to the east is Canada, and everything to the west is Michigan, with Detroit being the closest major city, about 6 miles or so away from St. Clair. And you've got your St. Clair River and your Detroit River that feed St. Clair, but you also have some Canadian rivers like Thames and Stinham, I think it's called, that enter in from southwest Ontario, the province of Ontario in Canada. And then you also have the Clinton from the Michigan side. So there's a lot of dynamics at play here. But at the end of the day, it's a smallie fishery, 430 square miles. Okay, you move down a little bit lower here, and you may be able to see get a better picture of St. Clair. So 430 square miles. The average depth of St. Clair is about 11 feet, so pretty shallow by anybody's estimation. And then you also have, I think the deepest part's 24 to 26 feet. But as anyone ever knows who's ever been on St. Clair, you are at the mercy of, and at all the Great Lakes, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, especially the wind. So the weather and wind especially is going to come into play this week on St. Clair, like it always does. I think the last time Bassmaster visited St. Clair was in 2020, and it was late August. Remember that? Because it was right around my birthday, and it was a really tight event. And I just remember that clearly. Like it was the Canadian, which one? I think it was Corey Johnston and John Cox were in the top. Bill Weldler won the event with over 86 pounds. But it was such a tight race that at the end, which is why it was like captivating, putting, smallmouth on, center stage. And again, it's 3 years ago. And where are we now, 3 years later, on the Bass Elite Tour? We've got a lot more anglers running forward-facing sonar, right? And so, a lot more. And that's what's really going to come into play here. Obviously, I consider St. Clair to be atypical in terms of size, because there's giants. But just drop shot, finesse drop shot. What I mean by finesse, it's going to be a lot of tube, Ned rig, shallow. That does not mean that we're not going to see depending on the weather, a significant spinnerbait bite as well, which I would not underestimate that. So when you look at your fantasy picks, have that mindset that you're looking for anglers that are forward-facing sonar guys, someone like a John Suckup, okay? Someone who's known for being able to target fish via live scope. And we know this, locating these guys is the game, right? In this fishery. Once you locate them, you're going to get on them. Now, let's go back a few weeks, 2 weeks ago, and we can kind of get an idea of how St. Clair set up for MLF. Remember, Jordan Lee won that, okay? His last 2 days, he ended up with 47-13, okay? That was the championship round. I'm only talking about the championship round, okay? So the top 10 anglers in the championship round for MLF on St. Clair, the 10th finished, which was Josh Bertrand, finished with 37-11, and then Jordan Lee finished with 47-13. So about a 10-pound difference. So what are we looking at, right? I think we're looking at 22 to 24 pounds a day to get you the win. Now, we know 3 years ago it took 86 pounds to win it, okay? We know that Jordan Lee put up 47-13 the last 2 days, championship round at MLF. Not sure the date of that was June 24th. June 24th, okay? And so that's interesting to kind of have that, the barometer of MLF and Bass. What's going to happen? About a month, we're a month, a month, 4 weeks between these two events. So, what has changed, what hasn't changed. At the end of the day, probably not much, depending on the weather. You get rain in there, you get wind. There's a picture in here I'm going to show you that pretty much typifies why St. Clair is a beast of a place to go. But believe it or not, people in the kayak community schedule events on St. Clair, which to me is crazy. But it's a great fishery, so I kind of understand why. So we're looking at like tubes, we're looking at Ned rigs. This is a predominantly, it is again end of July, so we'll see what happens if someone can get on an unorthodox jerkbait bite. I know at other times of year, jerkbait bite is fire on St. Clair. We'll see. So that's the other aspect. Jerkbait, spinnerbait, probably in the back behind finesse fishing, tubes, and Ned rigs. So there are a couple anglers you want to take a look at for your fantasy. And I'm going to go unorthodox on this one because I really think this event isn't going to go the way that a lot of people think it's going to go. Which means a lot of people, if you go into Bassmaster fantasy fishing and you look, like 38% or something like that of people are going to pick Brandon Polinick in Group A, Corey Johnston in Group B, I think Cooper Gallant in Group C. That's out Josh Douglas in Group D and Jacob Fowles in Group E. Those tend to be, it's done by groups. And I always tell people who follow this channel, I hate that, okay? I just want to pick 5 or 6 anglers that I think is going to win the event. I don't like the whole grouping and all that. I know it's a game. It's how it's all predicated. It's great to play that and have fun with that. But for me, I just think it's easier to just pick like top 5 or 6 anglers every single event like I've done all season that I think are going to excel on the fishery that we're talking about. And I think you'd be amiss if you did not consider, obviously, the Ontario, the Canadian anglers in this field. The Corey Johnstons of the world, the Jeff Gustafson. He would be a pick for my fantasy team. Jeff Gustafson, okay? Cooper Gallant, okay? One of those 3 guys. Or you can pick all 3 of those guys. If you want to go that local field, I'm seeing that right now with Tackle Warehouse Invitational MLF starting tomorrow, I believe, on La Crosse, the Mississippi River. There is a lot of local talent and local hammers in that event. I mean, so, sometimes there's one event or so that's kind of like a one-off that a lot of the local guys just really excel on. I think smallmouth's probably one of them for the guys from Canada. So when you want to look at these, you can get in there and get a feel, but overall, the guys that I really think are going to excel are going to be the guys that are known forward-facing sonar, live scope, hammers when it comes to smallmouth, okay? And so like I said before, John Suckup fits the forward-facing sonar mold. Wild cards, kind of like people probably aren't going to think of, although I think Takahito's probably up there now because he's gotten a push the last couple days in the fantasy rankings. So Taka Ito would be one, but don't also sleep on Fujita. Okay, not as prevalent many people moving to him, but remember he's got that small finesse bait style dialed in. Okay. And so that one of those two, I mean, they're starting to rise up here as we get closer to the event. We've got some history, with some of these anglers, over the years, okay, whether it be a Christie or a Seth Feeder, a Hyder. I mean, you've got some history there. Clark Wendell, another one. In that, I just kind of think like, from the perspective of forward-facing sonar and smallmouth, and based on what we saw with Jordan Lee, Alton Jones, and Jacob Wheeler, MLF, as well as some other guys that kind of surprised, like a Terry Scroggins, Mark Daniels were in that top 10 for MLF. And even Gary Klein was in that championship round. It's going to be really interesting to see how it sets up, because you're looking at forward-facing sonar. Drop shot has been a critical, kind of mainstay on St.Clair. Those anglers that can fish the drop shot, and picking your fantasy team. So I'm definitely going to stick with a Jeff Gustafson. Okay. I'm going to take a John Suckup just to cover my forward-facing sonar bite base. I like a Shane LaHue from North Carolina. Trying to think. Fujita could be a great wild card pick. Jay, I always botch his name. Shakrant, I guess. I always botch that guy's name. From Wisconsin. I mean, that's more or less fishing that stuff. Shakrant, more or less fishing that same smallie bite. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. Again, going more into that local type feel. Remember, this is running from Thursday this week until Sunday. So you got to put together those patterns, right? Again, 430 square acres. Okay. Was that right? 430 square miles, not acres. Yeah. 26 miles max length, 24 miles length width. Okay. Average depth, like I said, 11 feet. Max depth, 27. They have it listed at. Shore length, 130 miles of shore. 430 square miles. Okay. Don't think anybody's going to be making any runs to like the other lakes, if you know what I'm saying. Maybe though, but that's you're running that risk. Looking at this, but when you're looking at that Great Lakes region, that's what you're looking at the map here. You got Detroit River down in here, and then obviously you're looking at Canada and Michigan. Okay, there's the ramp. Northwestern end of the lake. Takeoff's going to be at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Weigh-ins are at 2 p.m. per usual. Let's take a look at, there you go. There's Bill Riedler. That was in 2020. Some of the small weeks he had in that event. But let's get back. There's a shot here of the conditions. Seth. There you go, right there. Look at that. That, to me, is St.Clair. When I think of St.Clair. In the probably 4 or 5 times that I've been to St.Clair, that's St.Clair to me. It's always a show. Never seem to get on that body of water the right time of year. Maybe I'll go back and try late fall this year. Or maybe some wintertime fishing. I don't know. But, never seem to be on that at the right time, just over the years. But that's what it is to me. And so you want to get out there in a kayak or something like that, God bless you. Hope you're carrying a lot of insurance for your family, because that's just redonkulous. But they do schedule events on St. Clair. They do. Believe it or not. Bass, I think, does. I know KBF has in the past. I know KFL, Kayak Fishing League, had events there. I think it was Motor City Ambassadors. Crazy, but they do it. And they catch a lot of fish, and that's why people do it. So those are like the guys, okay, like that you want to think about. Obviously, Corey Johnston. A lot of people are going to pick Corey Johnston. A lot of people are going to pick Brandon Polnick. Okay. A couple of the other guys, Patrick Walters. Okay. Another one. I can tell you that majority of people are going to be picking that. One wild card that I would keep an eye on, depending on what kind of league you're in, or if you're just picking with your buddies, Alex Redwine. So he would be a wild card, just like Fujita would be a wild card, as opposed to your, Alex Redwine or Alex Weatherall. That'd be another one. So those are all like wild cards in there. But I'm going to stick with and you could throw Seth in there too, because he does have a lot of experience and he's fished this lake numerous times. So Jeff Gustafson, Jay, Shane Lehue, John Suckup. And you didn't decide whether or not you want to go with another Canadian angler or not, like a Cooper or a Corey Johnston. I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of those guys, or a Patrick Walters. Some people. Here's two that most people might not have on the radar. Bernie Schultz. Okay, I know he's hit or miss, but he's pretty good in events like this. Typically, I know locally a lot of people have sent me stuff asking me about Chad Pipkins, more of a local angler. So there's been a lot of movement into that in terms of the local stuff. But I'm just not sure compared to the others. That would be a definite, you want to move up in your fantasy standings and you're going against the grain. I think that does not mean, not that Chad's watching, but does not mean he's not going to have a top 5 finish. I mean, I'm just saying, based on having Corey, Jeff, Cooper, Jay, John, Patrick Walters, Brandon Polnick, I think you basically know that's going to be a great call if you make that call and it turns out to be, successful for you, because I don't think that meant. I mean, it could be, could happen for sure going forward. But those are the guys you want to look at for Bassmaster Elite Series, Lake St. Clair. Coming up this Thursday to Sunday. Be able to watch that on Bassmaster.com and enjoy the fun with some smallies. Definitely going to be thrown down. Again, depending upon the weather. Remember last time they were there, it was August 20th. It's now July. Again, 86 pounds won the event 3 years ago. I'm looking at 22 to 24 pounds a day. So that's going to put us at 88 to 90, I would think. For the event. Remember, Keith Poche is not participating in this event because he fished in the MLF event. So he fished during the off limit. So he cannot fish in this event again. That's the second time I think that's happened to Keith this year. Not really sure if they're going to allow that to happen again next year. I don't. I just don't. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. But those are the picks. Play some fantasy fishing. Have some fun with it. And remember, take a kid fishing.